Hi, I'm Anthony Newbold. Welcome to A Closer Look. The old saying is, the health of a nation is the wealth of a nation. And so the question is, how wealthy is the Bahamas? To help us answer that question, I've invited the Minister of Health, the Honorable Dr. Duane Sands. Minister, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's an absolute privilege to be here.
Thank you for coming and sitting with us. How wealthy is the Bahamas?
Well, you know, we're kind of struggling when it comes to our health. I think we have quite a ways to go. The good news, however, is we're getting better.
Yeah. You've got the Ministry of Health, huge ministry. How do you determine what your priorities are going to be?
Well, you know, for me, this has been an absolute honor to have engendered the trust of the Prime Minister to take on such a massive challenge. The way we look at things is by determining the impact that it has on the lives of the people that we're privileged to serve. And so when you look at the big issues, non-communicable diseases, HIV/AIDS, violence and trauma, these are the things that we focus on. And the overriding or overarching goal is to take healthcare to the community, to take it to people where they need it.
What role does money play in how much success you end up having with whatever it is you want to do?
Money plays an awfully important role, but what we've learned how to do is to get blood out of a rock. And so we squeeze it and stretch it and do whatever we can to maximize value for the Bahamian dollar. So we have gone aggressively at eliminating waste in health.
Yeah. Do you have the staffing to do what you need done? And I'm not talking about having doctors or nurses. I'm talking about the technicians and the administrators. Do you have that kind of staff?
Simply put, no.
Yeah.
There are huge deficiencies, particularly in the allied health arenas. And if we focus, as we are, on solving some of those vacancies, let's say for radiographers or people that take x-rays or ultrasound technicians, pharmacists, lab technicians, then we could do an awful lot in the community as opposed to having a lot of healthcare centralized.
Yeah. What about the legislation that governs healthcare in the Bahamas? I'm sure some of that was kind of out of date.
So let's say the Vaccination Act, and vaccination right now is a hot topic when we talk about measles, when we talk about some other things. Vaccination Act, I think, came into force in 1860. And so it speaks to some of the challenges that we have to update a number of the very important legislative tools for health.
The physical plant, obviously, certainly at the PMH, has been a challenge. What are you doing about that? Because whatever else you do, you need to have that physical plant.
Let me talk about PMH. I grew up medically, professionally, at the Princess Margaret Hospital. For the last 24 years of my practice, on a daily basis, I was in and out of that hospital. And so there's a love, there's a bond. It's a special place that does incredible things for Bahamians. That said, Princess Margaret Hospital was built in 1952.
Yeah.
And so we've been trying to get this Model T to travel like a Ferrari.
Yeah.
We've tried to push it faster and harder than it was designed to be pushed. And so yes, it needs some work. In a previous administration, we would have started the creation of the critical care block.
Mm-hmm.
This administration is now about to embark on additional campaigns to upgrade the physical plant, the equipment, the supplies, all intended to improve the experience that our people have.
Speak to me for a minute, though, about the emergency room. I know that's always been one of the biggest challenges, certainly in terms of physical space at the PMH. What's happening?
Ground zero. That
Yes.
is where it happens. When people talk about Princess Margaret Hospital, they think about the emergency department. And that's where about 50 to 55,000 people come every year. We recognized, since I was head of department back 2000 or so, that the space was too small, that it needed a bit more flexibility. So we are imminently, actively in the process of expanding and improving the emergency department at Princess Margaret Hospital. The footprint is going to expand by about 50%. We're going to increase the number of rooms where people can be seen, where they can be examined with dignity, improve the overall fit and finish. We're going to increase the number of staff members so that the experience that our people have is second to none in the region.
As we talk about infrastructure and we talk about PMH, but we can't forget the RAND, because that's part of your remit as well. What's happening with the RAND?
The RAND, we expect to see the completion of the new kitchen and cafeteria by June of 2019. Then we're going to be tackling the physician on-call rooms. There is a plan to increase bed space, to increase the size of the intensive care unit, and to add additional bed capacity for patients on the wards as well as private services. So there's quite a bit happening at the RAND as well.
That's the RAND, PMH, yeah, and we talk about beds and whatever for the RAND. You need beds and extra furniture for the PMH as well.
It's important to understand when we say beds, that while the physical bed is important, we're also talking about a ward space.
Right.
So there are 2 additional wards about to come back on stream within the next 3 to 4 months. That's the male surgical ward and children's ward. After that, then, you have to have the physical beds, but also the staff to care for patients in those beds.
And staff, meaning then you're talking
All
about nurses?
Levels
all
of staff.
levels?
So you're talking not only nurses, a very important component of the team, but also porters, housekeepers, pharmacists, lab technicians. When you are trying to win a Super Bowl.
That are not presently on staff.
Not presently on staff. So when you're trying to win a Super Bowl, you can have the best quarterback ever. But unless you got a decent tight end and a decent wide receiver, you're not going to win the game.
Yeah.
And if you're the Miami Dolphins, you'll never win anyway.
For the Dolphin fans watching, you're going to be in trouble. Listen, you talk about health, and obviously we think about the medical part of what you need to do to be healthy. The lifestyle, though, is critical in determining what kind of health we end up enjoying.
You know,
have we
the
emphasized
old people
that?
say, if you like it, let it kill you.
Well,
And we have embraced that.
yeah.
As Bahamians, we have adopted a lifestyle that is simply unhealthy.
Yeah.
What we eat or what we don't eat, what we do or what we don't do. So many of us, if you look at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, it is sweet, it is salty, it is fatty. And when you ask, well, where are the fruit and vegetables? You know, I don't eat them kind of things. When we put something in our mouth to cool off, it is usually not just water, but a sugar-sweetened beverage of some kind. And so changing that culture is so critically important. The good news is when you look on the streets of New Providence and Grand Bahama and elsewhere, you see people out there in the morning and in the afternoon and in the evening getting their sweat on. You look at the gyms, you look at the basketball courts, you look at places of recreation, baseball fields. The message is getting out, and Bahamians are taking their health very seriously now.
Okay, I want to talk to you about that a little bit more before we move on to another subject, but we got to take a break. And we'll be back with more after this. Welcome back. We're discussing healthcare with the Minister of Health, Dr. Duane Sands. I wanted you to expand some more because I'm not sure that the message has quite gotten where it needs to get with respect to the lifestyles that we engage in.
So we have a choice. We can fix things on the back end,
Yeah.
or we can prevent them from the beginning. And the message that we're trying to get out is that when we look at the tsunami of non-communicable diseases, that's high blood pressure, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, stroke, kidney failure, that it is far easier, far cheaper, and a heck of a lot less painful if instead of pills and surgery and tests, that we take the approach that what we put in our mouth and what we do with our bodies is the right way to go. So we're trying to improve eating and to encourage exercise, movement.
And of course, obviously, you live healthily, it puts less of a strain on the healthcare system.
It puts less of a strain on the healthcare system, and it puts less of a strain on families.
Yeah.
No single individual is alone. There may be the rare exception to that. But an illness affecting a father impacts a wife and a whole family, an extended family, people that care for that individual. And the impact on the economy cannot be underestimated. When somebody has a heart attack, the impact on that family can be dramatic, but to the productivity of our country, it's serious as well.
We talk about health all the time. Do we talk about mental health enough? Because that's almost like the stepchild, if you will. Nobody really talks about mental health. You see people walking the streets.
We have made it a priority, and to get people to understand that if you have a mental health challenge, that you're not weak, and you certainly don't have a problem where it's simply a matter that you need Jesus. Now, I don't want to minimize the importance of religion and Christianity or whatever religion you happen to explore. But at the end of the day, there are people who have real challenges with their mental health. Many of them are stigmatized. Some of them are homeless. And to provide adequate community-based services is a particular interest of this ministry and something that we have to continue to expand and to do better on. An example, for instance, is the issue of problem gambling.
Yeah.
If we look at the proliferation of gaming houses around the Commonwealth of the Bahamas and the impact that those people with problem gambling habits, it's a mental illness. So when you spend your mortgage money, your rent money, the children's school fee money, grocery money, that is a serious problem.
Yeah.
And we are recognizing this, we're seeing it, and we are supporting those individuals as best we can.
You spoke to this briefly before, and I don't know that you could inoculate anyone against gambling, but immunization, is that, you still do mass immunizations?
We do. The Bahamas enjoys a robust immunization campaign and has enjoyed that campaign and its efficacy for many decades. The problem is that we're pushing against the anti-vaccination movement, which is worldwide.
Yes.
And that anti-vaccination movement, as well as just the challenges of life, have resulted in a drop-off in the coverage. So let's take example, measles, mumps, and rubella, which are all together in one shot. We used to have 95% coverage. It is now dropped to about 91% coverage. That's not high enough to give what we call herd immunity. And so given the fact that there are pockets of measles in the United States, in South America, in Europe, in Canada, we recognize that we have to now go and double down on reaching the people, the 15,000 children that weren't vaccinated, and all of the people that are on the front line. So when I greet you at the airport, when I take you in my cab, if I'm a police officer or a hotel worker, I want to feel very comfortable that I'm protected against the possibility of an imported case of measles or yellow fever or some other vaccine-preventable illness.
Yeah. We were talking about healthy lifestyles. You're talking about the food that we eat. You got to manage that bread basket.
We have done with a number of town hall meetings. We traveled up and down the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. We engaged the people. And we have now completed our report to the Cabinet of the Bahamas. Once we present that report, I am happy to say tonight that it's expected that we're going to expand and modify the bread basket to include healthier items. As you know, the Prime Minister would have removed value-added tax from bread basket items. So it is going to be less expensive to eat healthy in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Talking about food, any efforts to direct how menus look? Say, for example, in public spaces, lunch vendors in schools, for example.
Yes. It's interesting. We have a new show on TV. I understand that it's starting to generate some pretty good reviews. It's called What You Cooking. And the idea is to teach Bahamians that, you know, if it's healthy, it doesn't have to taste bad. We used to say, if it tastes good, spit it out, right? Well, we're changing that line. The idea is that what is healthy ought to be pleasurable to eat as well. When you look at the schools, we are now liaising with the Ministry of Education to determine what types of healthy or unhealthy foods are sold not only inside the gates, but outside the gates, and to add a component of enforcement. So the sugar-sweetened beverages or sodas, big problem among our youth, because we're watching our children get larger and larger and to start having diseases like high blood pressure and diabetes as teenagers.
Yeah.
Serious problem.
Serious? You see a lot of that now?
We have tracked over successive years the number of our young people who are either overweight or obese, and the numbers are absolutely staggering.
Yeah.
And we can pinpoint the change in diet. So what happens when you go for a salty, sugary, either drink or food, which obviously tastes good because it's engineered by the manufacturers to be addictive. And so we now have created food addicts and drink addicts of our children.
You have obviously your own initiatives. You would do whatever you can as the Ministry of Health. How do you engage the rest of civil society, if you will, to help in making sure people understand how they ought to?
My team and I have been actively engaged to be in your face. We want health to be a part of the daily conversation. And I think over the last 18 or 20 months, we have accomplished just that. People are talking about health. They're talking about the bread basket. Bread basket been around since 1974. Who spoke about the bread basket before? Now they're talking about it. People are talking about fruit and vegetables. They're talking about exercise. They're exercising. They're talking about TB. They're talking about vaccination, measles, conversations that never really made it to the fore.
Yeah.
We want our people to be actively engaged, participants in their healthcare.
Whatever space you have at the PMH and whatever you build, you still have some clinics out there. Are they being effectively utilized?
We've got almost 98 clinics around the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Okay.
Many of them need some work, and we're actively involved in upgrading them. I have toured most of them. I still got to get to Cat Island. I still got to get to Rum Cay and San Salvador. Other than that, we've been up and down the archipelago. The idea that we're going to move healthcare out of the major hospitals and take it more into the community remains an excellent idea. The idea that you can have somebody who's going to be visited on a regular basis by a nurse, who is going to make sure that you're taking your medication properly and give you a few minutes to explain what is hypertension, what is diabetes, why that wound should be cared for in a different way. All of these are initiatives that are ongoing and intended to, again, involve the people in managing their own health.
And we're going to have to come back to this, but I want you to speak to this some more. We talk specifically about New Providence because that's where most of the activity is. You have clinics on the outskirts of New Providence.
Yes.
I want you to tell me about how they are being utilized and what you're doing to make them even more effective, but we got to take a break, think about it, and we'll be back with more after this. Welcome back. Anthony Newbold speaking with Dr. Duane Sands, the Minister of Health, about health care clinics in New Providence. They're being effectively utilized. What are you doing to make sure that they fill the role that you need them to play, which is to take some of that load off of PMH?
So we have decided to focus on three in particular: Anstown, Elizabeth Estates, and South Beach. Why Elizabeth Estates? I don't know. It just kind of happened.
Yeah, right.
But the idea that we can create urgent care facilities that can do a number of the things that people would ordinarily go to Princess Margaret Hospital to get done underlies the plan to expand South Beach, Anstown, and to improve Elizabeth Estates. So that project, which is the urgent care project, is taking place simultaneously with the upgrade at Princess Margaret Hospital's emergency room. People will be able to see expanded services in the community, so that if you come home and your child's not well, as opposed to having to drive all the way to Princess Margaret Hospital and to potentially wait for a long time, you could go to South Beach or Elizabeth Estates or perhaps Annstown. So we recognize that these clinics are an important part of community health care.
Yeah. As we talk about healthcare and the progress that you're making, at one point, the Bahamas was the leader, I think, in treatment, HIV, AIDS. Where are we now with that? What are you doing with that?
We have not lost, certainly in the region. If you look at the impact on mother-to-child transmission, if you look at the universality of availability of HIV medications and availability of physicians and nurses, we continue to lead the region. But you know, we some biggity people, the Bahamas. We are audacious in what we want to do. And we have decided as a technical team that we are going to be the first country in the world to eliminate HIV.
Okay.
So by 2030, we intend, embracing the WHO mandate for what we call 90-90-90, to make sure that 90% of people who are HIV positive are diagnosed, that 90% of those diagnosed are on treatment, and 90% of those on treatment have complete suppression of the virus. This bold, biggity country is going to do it. And so when people say, is the Bahamas yet a key influencer of world policy and health? The answer is yes. We are going to regain that preeminence.
Talking about treatment, which means medicines. I understand you are working on an updated protocol for what would be acceptable medicines, which will get your stamp of approval, where you will say, yeah, it's okay to take that kind of medicine.
One of the synergies that we enjoy is the fact that most of the antiretroviral or HIV drugs used throughout the world are manufactured in the Bahamas. So in conjunction with the Office of the Spouse of the Prime Minister, we have established an initiative to partner with Gilead Sciences to make available newer drugs, more effective drugs for the treatment of HIV, to be made available to everybody in the country. That, as well as modifying the approach to diagnosis and the creation of a brand new HIV facility. You may recall that the Royal Victoria Gardens is scheduled for a makeover.
Yes.
So the HIV Secretariat is going to have a new home, and we're actively seeking that locale. In conjunction with the new initiative, a new home, a new initiative, and an incredible revelation to be made about 10 years from now.
About 10 years from now. We don't have enough time in this go-around, but I need you to address this particular thing. However, briefly, what can you tell the public? What kind of good news can you give the public about NHI and that initiative that's been?
NHI is now serving almost 50,000 Bahamians, and they have had an absolutely splendid experience with NHI. This administration believes that the expansion of NHI to include coverage for catastrophic care, heart disease, kidney failure, cancers, is an important part of the role of a caring government. And so the Cabinet and the NHI Authority have been back and forth to figure out how it should look and how we should pay for it.
Yeah.
Stay tuned and we'll be able to give an update pretty soon.
Yeah, in addition to that, it's always great to know what's happening now. What can you tell us this on the horizon, next fiscal year, for example, other than this great news you're going to have about NHI?
So we are planning the complete revamping of maternal and child health, as well as the emergency department for Princess Margaret Hospital. So you have seen rising out of the dust the critical care block that has revolutionized care in critical care. The next tower for the phase redevelopment of Princess Margaret Hospital is a brand new the emergency department and maternal child health tower. And so we hope to be able to introduce that and to break ground on that sometime in 2020.
That would be part of the good news for the future. And so the next time you sit and talk to me, you're going to be able to tell me how far you've come. In fact, you're going to be able to tell me about some results you've achieved.
I am so pleased with what we've been able to do with what we have before us. And the people with whom I'm privileged to work, whether it's at the PHA, the Department of Public Health, or the Ministry of Health, I think we have bonded as a team. We recognize the limitations, and we don't pay a whole lot of attention to it. We're just busy getting the job done.
Thank you very much, Minister. And thank you again for watching. I've been speaking with the Minister of Health, the Honorable Dr. Duane Sands. Join us again next week when we will continue to explore areas of the Prime Minister's national address.